Welcome. Today we are exploring one of the most enduring and really captivating stories in global history. The life, the record-breaking career, and the final unresolved flight of Amelia Earhart.
Hmm.
Born Amelia Mary Earhart in 1897, she rapidly became an American aviation pioneer, an acclaimed author, and truly one of the most significant cultural figures of the 20th century.
That's right.
Her life was defined by this relentless drive. She pushed boundaries, she broke records, and ultimately, she vanished in 1937 while attempting a historic circumnavigation of the globe.
And that vanishing act remains a great mystery, one that continues to generate just enormous speculation decades later.
It really does.
Our exploration today is a close examination of the sources, drawn from a comprehensive biographical account. We are focused purely on synthesizing the specific, verifiable facts available about her preparation, her monumental career, and the complicated sequence of events surrounding her final moments.
Yeah.
This detailed analysis will take you on a journey from her earliest sort of unconventional days in Kansas right up to her ill-fated final flight over the Pacific.
Okay, so let's unpack this and start right at the beginning.
Yeah.
The making of an American pioneer. Amelia Earhart was born in Atchison, Kansas on July 24, 1897. And the sources emphasize that her upbringing was fundamentally unconventional, and this really set the stage for her future independence.
It really did. Her mother, Amy Earhart, she held this deliberate philosophy that she would not raise her daughters to be nice little girls.
Which was a very progressive stance for the late 19th century.
Oh, absolutely. It certainly fostered an early spirit of adventure in Amelia and her sister Grace.
And it wasn't just passive encouragement, was it? It was more like active stimulation of curiosity and boundary pushing.
Exactly. Amelia, who was nicknamed Mealy, and Grace Pidge, they lived a very adventurous childhood. I mean, they were climbing trees, hunting rats with a rifle.
With a rifle?
With a .22 rifle, yes. And they engaged in these feats of physical daring. The earliest, and maybe the most illustrative anecdote, comes from 1904.
The roller coaster.
The roller coaster, yes. Amelia and her uncle constructed a homemade roller coaster ramp. And you have to understand, this wasn't some little playground novelty.
No.
It was secured to the roof of the family tool shed.
The inaugural ride sounds, well, it sounds terrifying.
It was. She used a broken wooden box as her sled. She emerged from the crash with a bruised lip, a torn dress, but a definitive sensation of exhilaration.
And what did she say?
She told her sister, "Oh, Pitch, it's just like flying." That's the first proof point, really, of that aviator mindset, the linking of risk, speed, and elation, long before she ever saw a proper airplane.
But it's so fascinating that despite that feeling, that exhilaration, she still wasn't interested in actual airplanes when she first encountered one.
Not in the slightest. In 1908, when she was 10, her father tried to get the girls interested in taking a flight at the Iowa State Fair.
And what was her reaction?
Amelia looked at the biplane and just dismissed it. She described it later in her writings as, and I quote, "a thing of rusty wire and wood and not at all interesting."
Not at all interesting. Wow.
Her mind was still set on the merry-go-round. This early indifference makes her later, total commitment to aviation all the more remarkable. It shows that when she finally did commit, it was absolute.
And to understand that commitment, we really have to look at the financial pressures and the emotional upheaval that marked the end of her childhood.
Definitely. The sources detail severe financial distress after her father, Edwin, lost his job. This was due to ongoing struggles with alcoholism.
And this wasn't a slow decline, was it?
No, not at all. It culminated in the auctioning off of the family home in 1914, an event Amelia described as the definitive, abrupt end of her childhood. The stability was just gone, and she entered adulthood navigating some really significant financial hurdles.
And not just financial ones. That abrupt transition also coincided with a major health crisis.
A profound one. During her Christmas break in 1917, while visiting her sister in Toronto, she volunteered as a Red Cross nurse's aide.
This was during World War I.
Right, tending to wounded soldiers returning from the front. Then, in 1918, while she was on duty, she contracted the Spanish flu during that devastating global pandemic.
And the long-term physical toll of that infection was just immense.
It led to chronic maxillary sinusitis, which is a painful and debilitating condition. She suffered from persistent symptoms, intense pressure around her eye, chronic headaches, copious mucus drainage.
It sounds awful.
The sources recount that she underwent painful and ultimately unsuccessful minor operations during her hospitalization. You really can't overstate the psychological and physical toll of fighting a chronic, painful illness while simultaneously pursuing these incredible feats of endurance.
It really positions her achievements not just as triumphs of skill, but as extraordinary tests of physical grit.
It provides a crucial subtext to the whole Queen of the Air persona. She sometimes even had to wear a bandage on her cheek to cover a small drainage tube.
That context is vital. She was navigating these major physical hurdles while striving for global records.
Okay, so let's pinpoint the moment aviation truly seized her imagination.
That turning point happened in California on December 28, 1920. She and her father attended an airfair in Long Beach.
Mm-hmm.
The following day, she convinced her father to pay for a 10-minute passenger flight with a pilot named Frank Hawks. The cost was $10.
Which, adjusted for inflation today, is about $160.
Right. And given the family's recent severe financial struggles, that was an extravagant, almost reckless expense. It just shows the depth of her immediate visceral reaction.
And she later famously said,
By the time I had got 200 or 300 feet off the ground, I knew I had to fly.
that one brief, expensive flight just decided her future. She then committed fully and showed this intense personal discipline just to fund her dream.
She did. She worked a whole series of jobs: photographer, truck driver, stenographer, saving every penny just to accumulate the $1,000 needed for lessons and her first plane.
$1,000 was a fortune then, equivalent to about $18,000 today. In January 1921, she hired Nita Snook as her instructor. And her dedication went beyond just financial sacrifice. It extended to adopting the entire persona of an aviator.
Including crafting her public image.
Exactly. She cropped her hair short, mimicking other female flyers of the era, and she bought a second-hand, brightly colored, chromium yellow Kinner Airster biplane.
Which she fondly nicknamed the Canary.
The Canary, yes. She even bought a new leather flying coat, but she hated the teasing she got for having a new coat, so she aged it herself, sleeping in it and staining it with aircraft oil to give it that authentic, worn look.
That's classic Amelia. Just rejecting the norms and crafting her own image of toughness. Her ascent was incredibly fast after that.
It was a rapid climb. By October 1922, so just 22 months after her first flight, she set a world altitude record for female pilots at 14,000 feet.
Incredible.
She officially received her pilot's license, number 1617, in May 1923, becoming only the 16th woman in the U.S. to achieve that milestone.
But the financial realities of supporting this very demanding sport quickly resurface.
They did, due to a disastrous investment in a failed gypsum mine, an investment handled through her grandmother's inheritance, administered by her mother. Her funds just dwindled rapidly.
And she had to sell her planes.
She was forced to. This necessitated a move to Boston, where she found stable work as a social worker at Denison House.
Yet, even as a social worker, she remained thoroughly connected to the aviation world. She was writing newspaper columns, promoting flying, helping to found the Lidington Airline,
which was the first regional shuttle service between New York and Washington, D.C.
So she continued advocating for the field, ensuring her name stayed in the public eye as someone determined to normalize and popularize aviation. That determination to stay relevant in the aviation world suddenly launched her into global celebrity in 1928, though, as we know, she initially found her role to be, well, pretty restrictive. Let's discuss the 1928 Atlantic crossing.
This flight was born entirely from the frenzy following Charles Lindbergh's success in 1927. The project was conceived and financed by an American heiress, Amy Phipps Guest.
And she wanted to fly herself, originally.
She did, but she backed out due to intense family pressure. However, she was resolute that a woman must achieve the milestone. So she began searching for what she termed the right sort of girl.
Which meant what, exactly?
Someone who was not only a capable pilot, but also well-educated, well-mannered, and physically attractive. A representative figure, in other words.
And this is where the powerful publicist and publisher George Palmer Putnam, or GP, enters the story. He becomes arguably the most crucial figure in her career.
Precisely. Putnam, who has successfully managed Lindbergh's best-selling autobiography, heard about the plan. He and Captain Hilton Rayleigh resolved to find this ideal woman on Get's behalf.
So they went to Boston.
Rayleigh was directed to Denison House in Boston, and the moment he met Amelia, a woman already known in the local flying circles and advocacy groups, he was convinced. He simply asked her, "How would you like to be the first woman to cross the Atlantic?"
And she agreed, but not without some trepidation and conditions.
Absolutely. She made it immediately clear that being a mere passenger was fundamentally unappealing. She wanted to take the controls.
But she couldn't.
The logistical reality was that she lacked the experience and the specific requirements for this endeavor. Multi-engine aircraft handling and non-visual instrument flying, which was essential for crossing the Atlantic.
Despite these limitations, she was formally granted the title of commander aboard the Fokker FBI trimotor, the Friendship. She had authority over all policy and personnel.
Even though Wilmer Stultz was the primary pilot and Louis Gordon the mechanic.
Yes, and the flight itself sounds incredibly tense.
Oh, it was complicated and fraught with anxiety. They were delayed repeatedly in Newfoundland due to gales and thick fog. When they finally took off on June 17, 1928, they were almost immediately plagued by dense fog and cloud cover.
Which meant Stultz had to fly entirely on instruments.
Right. Because Earhart wasn't proficient in instrument-only flying, she couldn't take the controls, so she kept the flight log instead. And crucially, their radio failed early on, meaning they lost the ability to transmit or receive messages, which just added to the tension.
After merely 21 tense, blind hours, they landed in the Burry Estuary in Wales, and this is the moment that defined her next 4 years.
Her immediate, candid reaction upon landing really revealed the depth of her ambition. She said, "I was just baggage like a sack of potatoes. Maybe someday I'll try it alone."
Just baggage.
Despite this limited role and her own dissatisfaction, she became the instantaneous focus of intense public and media attention.
The subsequent American reception was just overwhelming. She received a ticker tape parade in New York, a massive public display of adoration.
And was received by President Calvin Coolidge at the White House.
Despite her modesty and her insistence that the men deserved the credit, she was instantly and perhaps unfairly dubbed Lady Lindy and the Queen of the Air.
And this is where G.P. Putnam's marketing acumen came into full effect. He managed every aspect of her burgeoning career, organizing extensive lecture tours, securing lucrative endorsements for products.
Luggage, clothing, even Lucky Strike cigarettes.
That's right. It's notable, though, that she often used her commercial success for higher purposes. The money from that cigarette endorsement, for example, was redirected by her to help fund Richard Byrd's Antarctic expedition.
She masterfully balanced that celebrity status with genuine aviation advocacy. She wasn't just a face, she was a voice.
She was. She served as an associate editor at Cosmopolitan, campaigning actively for aviation acceptance, particularly championing women's roles in the field.
And that advocacy was formalized when she co-founded the 99s.
An organization specifically for female pilots. She became its first president in 1930. She understood that her visibility could pave the way for other women.
Her personal life also became a matter of public fascination, especially her marriage to George P. Putnam in 1931.
And their union was anything but conventional. She described it as a pragmatic partnership with dual control.
The wedding day letter?
Yes. The sources provide powerful insight into her views via a letter she delivered to him on their wedding day, stressing her progressive views and her independence. She wrote that she would not hold him to any medieval code of faithfulness, nor consider herself similarly bound.
Incredible.
She stressed her independence in every way, kept her own name, and laughed off the New York Times when they mistakenly called her Mrs. Putnam.
This dedication to independence and her previous baggage comment set the stage for the definitive achievement that validated her reputation, the solo transatlantic triumph in 1932.
On May 20 in 1932, exactly 5 years after Lindbergh's solo flight, she departed solo from Harbor Grace, Newfoundland, in her Lockheed Vega 5B. The plan was to emulate Lindbergh by landing in Paris.
But the flight was brutal.
The sources describe a harrowing experience. It lasted just under 14 hours and 56 minutes, and she battled strong northerly winds, intense icing that coated the wings, and significant mechanical problems.
Including a cracked manifold that was spewing flames.
Yes, spewing flames and threatening engine failure. She realized she couldn't make it to Paris and had to divert. She eventually landed, crashed, really, in a pasture in Culmore, Northern Ireland.
And an anecdote that followed is just legendary. When a local farmhand approached her and asked if she had flown far,
She simply replied, "From America."
that landing was a monumental moment. It secured her place as the first woman to fly solo nonstop across the Atlantic.
And the accolades poured in almost instantly. She received the Distinguished Flying Cross from the U.S. Congress, the French Legion of Honor, and the prestigious National Geographic Society Gold Medal from President Hoover.
Her increased celebrity also led to significant political connections, perhaps most notably her close friendship with First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt.
Very close. They communicated frequently, and Roosevelt shared her keen interest in women's causes and aviation.
And Roosevelt was reportedly so inspired that she took a flight with Earhart.
She did, and even obtained a student flying permit herself, although she didn't pursue her flight training further. This relationship really highlights how Earhart translated personal accomplishment into cultural and political influence.
And she just continued to set benchmarks throughout the mid-1930s.
Yes. In January 1935, she became the first aviator, male or female, to fly solo from Honolulu, Hawaii to Oakland, California.
And the sources note this flight was almost routine for her by that point.
Mainly routine for her, yes. In the final hours, she was so relaxed she was listening to the broadcast of the Metropolitan Opera from New York while flying over the Pacific.
That speaks volumes about her confidence and skill level.
It does. She was also relentlessly competitive, even when she was outmatched by technology. She finished 5th in the 1935 Bendix Trophy long-distance air race.
And the sources clarify that this was the best result she could have achieved in her stock Lockheed Vega.
It was simply outclassed by other custom-built racing aircraft. And that really proved to her that if she wanted to take on the truly epic challenges, she needed a new machine. By 1935, she conceived of her ultimate goal, a circumnavigation of the globe as near its waistline as could be.
That unprecedented goal required a major shift in resources and a completely new aircraft. So let's look at the extensive preparation for her final circumnavigation.
This endeavor was so massive it required institutional support. She secured substantial funding through Purdue University, where she had been engaged as a visiting faculty member.
Right, advising on aeronautical engineering and counseling female students.
The Amelia Earhart Fund for Aeronautical Research provided $50,000 to purchase the new plane, a Lockheed Electra 10E twin-engine monoplane.
And she famously dubbed this plane her flying laboratory. What exactly did that involve, beyond just extra fuel tanks?
The modifications were substantial and absolutely necessary for the 29,000-mile equatorial route. They stripped out all the comforts. Passenger seats were removed entirely.
And the cabin was filled with auxiliary fuel tanks.
Right. It was essentially a massive flying gas can with 2 seats up front. It also featured specialized state-of-the-art radio equipment, including the Bendix direction finding system and the latest celestial navigation equipment. This is a custom, highly specialized machine built solely for distance and endurance.
The crew dynamics, though, were complicated right from the start.
They were. Initially, she planned to fly with Harry Manning,
a highly skilled, licensed pilot, radio operator, and ship's captain who had actually transported her back from Europe in 1928.
Yes, but an error Manning made during a test flight, putting them 20 miles off position, raised concerns with Putnam, who was overseeing the logistics.
So they brought in Fred Noonan.
Yes. Fred Noonan was brought in specifically due to the extreme complexity of celestial navigation required over the vast, featureless Pacific Ocean. Noonan was a licensed ship's captain with experience in both marine and flight navigation.
And he had been instrumental in establishing Pan Am's complex China Clipper seaplane routes.
He was a true expert in long-range overwater navigation.
They made their first attempt in March 1937, flying the Oakland to Honolulu leg, with Earhart, Noonan, Manning, and technical advisor Paul Mantz aboard.
And that attempt ended in disaster before the flight truly began. After landing at the U.S. Navy's Luke Field at Pearl Harbor for maintenance, they attempted takeoff for the next leg.
What happened?
During the takeoff run, the Electra suffered an uncontrolled ground loop. That's when the tail end of the plane overtakes the nose. This collapsed the forward landing gear and severely damaged both propellers.
And the sources show the cause of this crash is highly debated, even today.
That's right. Some witnesses, including an Associated Press journalist on the scene, reported seeing a tire blowout, and Earhart herself thought the right tire had blown.
But other sources disagreed.
Most notably, Paul Mantz, the technical advisor who knew the plane intimately. He cited pilot error by Earhart as the cause, suggesting she lost control during the acceleration phase.
Regardless of the exact cause, the aircraft was severely damaged. They had to abandon the entire first attempt.
Absolutely. The Electra had to be shipped all the way back to the Lockheed plant in Burbank, California, for extensive, time-consuming repairs.
And when they relaunched, they reversed the direction of the flight,
flying west to east instead of east to west. This was partly due to timing. They needed to wait for the repairs, which meant global wind and weather patterns had shifted since the initial planning.
And critically, the crew changed. Harry Manning, the skilled pilot and radio operator, he departed the crew. This left only Earhart and Fred Noonan for the final, most dangerous legs.
And this is where we see the material compromises that would later prove catastrophic. Putnam, who managed the funding and publicity, was under intense pressure to get the flight moving again.
And the sources confirm he controversially pressed for the removal of important navigational, communication, and safety equipment to lighten the aircraft.
Wait, the man managing her career and funding pressed to remove navigation equipment right before the most difficult oceanic leg. That sounds like a catastrophic conflict of interest, prioritizing spectacle and range over safety.
It does. Did the sources indicate how Amelia felt about that pressure, or if she resisted?
The sources imply she acquiesced to the professional pressure and the need for range. The priority was getting across the ocean with enough fuel.
So what was removed?
The items removed included some safety features and, crucially, a high-frequency radio antenna that might have allowed for stronger voice communication over longer distances. It was a trade-off that, in retrospect, was extremely high risk.
It was predicated on the belief that their remaining navigation gear, especially Noonan's celestial skills, would be enough.
Exactly. Despite these compromises, the initial legs of the second attempt were highly successful. They departed Miami on June 1st, 1937.
And after navigating across South America, Africa, the Arabian Peninsula, India, and Southeast Asia, they arrived at Lae, New Guinea on June 29.
They had completed 22,000 miles of the journey, which was a monumental accomplishment in itself. The remaining 7,000 miles were the final treacherous stretch across the vast Pacific, requiring precision navigation to hit these tiny island refuel points.
Now we arrive at the final leg of the flight, the journey from Lae to Howland Island, where the communications and navigation began to fail dramatically, leading to the mystery we still discuss today.
They took off from Lae Airfield on July 10th in 1937 at 10:00 a.m. local time. The destination, Howland Island, was truly a speck in the vast Pacific, 2,556 miles away.
And to illustrate the difficulty of finding it, the sources stress just how tiny Howland Island is.
It's only 6,500 feet long, 1,600 feet wide, and barely 10 feet high above the ocean surface. Finding it, even in good weather, required monumental accuracy.
The expected flying time was about 20 hours.
Approximately, yes. And to aid them, the U.S. Coast Guard cutter USCGC Itasca was stationed right at Howland. This ship was meant to be their absolute lifeline, providing multiple redundancies for navigation.
It was tasked with providing radio communication via voice and Morse code,
Transmitting a homing signal, utilizing radio direction finding or RDF, and even creating a dark column of smoke from its boilers visible over the horizon. It was a massive naval effort dedicated to guiding them in.
Yet tragically, the sources conclude that all of these navigation methods, voice, Morse, RDF, and visual, failed to guide Earhart and Noonan to Howland Island.
It is just a devastating story of proximity and misconnection. Let's detail the radio communication breakdown.
Okay.
Earhart's voice transmissions, using her call sign KH8QQ, were strong and clear to the Itasca's receiving equipment. This indicates the electric transmitter was working well.
But she couldn't hear them.
Correct. Earhart herself was unable to hear the ship's voice replies. This suggests a fundamental incompatibility or a failure on the electric's receiving end.
When did the crisis truly begin?
It began around 6:14 a.m., local Howland time. Earhart requested a bearing, estimating they were within 200 miles, and then she whistled into the microphone to provide a continuous signal.
Which is necessary for the ship to track their direction.
Exactly. And this is the moment the Itasca crew realized their radio direction finding system, their primary guidance tool, could not tune into the aircraft signal on 3 out of 105 kilohertz, the frequency Earhart was using for voice.
So the Itasca could hear her clearly, but they could not use their sophisticated equipment to tell her where she was relative to them, or vice versa.
That is the core of the tragedy. Radio man Leo Bellart's later commented that he was sitting there sweating blood because I couldn't do a darn thing about it. They knew she was close, but their technical incompatibility rendered their most crucial tool useless.
Despite this failure, Earhart and Noonan were clearly closing in.
Agonizingly close.
Huh.
At 7:58 a.m., Earhart's transmission was reported as the loudest possible signal, a critical detail confirming they were definitely in the immediate area of Howland.
And she asked them to send voice signals.
She did, so she could try to take a radio bearing using her onboard equipment. But because the ship couldn't transmit voice on that specific frequency she requested, they sent high-speed Morse code instead.
And she couldn't use it.
She acknowledged receiving the code, but still reported that she was utterly unable to determine direction.
It sounds like a cascade of compounded errors that went far beyond just the radio incompatibility.
Multiple factors contributed to this final failure. First, there was a confusing time discrepancy. Earhart and the Itasca were operating on time systems set a crucial half-hour apart.
Greenwich Civil Time versus Naval Time Zone designation.
Right. This led to misaligned communication schedules. The ship often missed Earhart's critical windows for communication because they were transmitting or listening half an hour too early or too late based on her flight plan.
And then there was this specific technical deficiency with the newly installed Bendix direction finding system on the Electra.
This is a vital point. The system used a rotating loop antenna. In theory, you rotate the antenna until the signal is at its minimum, or weakest point. The bearing of that minimum signal should point to the radio beacon.
But her training on this complex system was minimal.
A brief introduction by Joe Gurr at the Lockheed factory. The card detailing the antenna's band settings was even mounted so she couldn't see it easily.
And why couldn't she find that minimum signal?
Because of the environment and the system's limitations? Close to the target, the signals were so strong and there was so much atmospheric distortion over the water that the minimum signal necessary for accurate triangulation simply blurred into the maximum signal.
So she had no way to gauge direction.
Without being able to pinpoint the minimum signal, she was flying blind despite being within shouting distance.
Her final known position, just before contact was lost, was based entirely on Noonan's astronomical navigation.
That's correct. The last voice transmission indicated she and Noonan were flying along a line of position running north to south, 337 degrees. This line was calculated by Noonan based on celestial readings taken hours earlier.
And the plan was to fly up and down that line until Howland Island came into sight.
Or until the radio guidance finally worked. They'd simply run out of time and fuel searching along that line.
Contact was lost shortly after, despite frantic attempts by the Itasca to reach them with both voice and Morse code.
The sources confirmed the U.S. government concluded in its subsequent report that the Electra simply ran out of fuel and crashed into the ocean near Howland Island.
It's just a terrible human tragedy. Running out of fuel and disappearing over the vast, empty Pacific at age 39, a devastating end to such a spectacular career.
It's also important to note that the official declaration of her death was not immediate.
No, it wasn't.
It didn't occur until January 5, 1939. And this was not based on a definitive recovery of evidence, but purely for financial and legal reasons. Putnam needed to become the trustee of her estate to handle her affairs.
The fact that no physical evidence was ever definitively found is precisely what keeps the story active and sustains the enduring mystery. Let's look at the sheer scale and cost of the immediate aftermath.
The initial air and sea search undertaken by the U.S. Navy and Coast Guard was truly unprecedented in U.S. history up to that time. It was an enormous logistical effort.
It lasted until July 19, 1937, covering over 250,000 square miles of ocean.
And the cost was just staggering. $4 million in 1937.
Which is the equivalent of $87 million in today's money.
And despite that massive, concentrated effort, no physical evidence of Earhart, Noonan, or the Electra was ever found.
That initial uncertainty was instantly compounded by amateur radio reports claiming to hear her signals long after she should have run out of fuel.
The airwaves became chaotic. An amateur radio operator in Oakland, for instance, reported hearing emergency transmissions, including one on July 3, identified as Earhart's voice, accompanied by her plane's call letters.
And a later faint message allegedly said, "Cannot hold out much longer."
Putnam believed these signals were authentic because they were timed precisely within 5 minutes of the half hour, the expected interval for SOS messages, according to her flight plan.
But military sources were skeptical.
They were. The captain of the USS Colorado, which joined the search, noted later that the sheer volume of stations calling on her frequency, many of them confirmed hoaxes or phantom signals generated by static, added to the confusion and doubtfulness of the authenticity of the reports.
So if the government concluded the plane crashed near Howland due to lack of fuel, why does the speculation persist globally? Let's review the main theories, impartially, starting with the prevailing professional belief.
Right. The general belief, held by the majority of historians and several military figures present at Howland, is the ocean crash.
They believe the plane ran out of fuel and went into the sea near Howland,
resting potentially at a depth of 17,000 to 18,000 feet. The cause points to a combination of fuel exhaustion, radio incompatibility, and navigational mistakes, like Noonan possibly miscalculating the narrow, single-line approach.
The very difficulty of the target, a 10-foot-high island, made a slight error fatal.
Exactly. Then we have the geographically alternative theory that has driven immense ongoing private search efforts. the Gardner Island hypothesis,
This posits that they were unable to locate Howland and instead turned south.
and managed a crash landing on the reef surrounding Gardner Island, now called Enigma, 350 nautical miles southeast of Howland. The theory suggests they survived briefly as castaways.
And this island has been the subject of numerous expensive, privately funded expeditions over the last 3 decades.
It has. They've been searching for wreckage or remains.
And what do the sources say about the findings there?
The sources are clear. Despite these numerous and costly efforts to find a definitive link on Enigma, no conclusive, verifiable evidence, no structural aluminum, no human remains, no clear identifying artifact has been found that ties the site definitively to Earhart or the Electra.
So the theory remains compelling, but unproven.
Very much so. There's also the highly charged, often sensationalized Japanese capture theory.
This belief is held by some, including a number of Earhart's relatives.
Yes, suggesting that the aviators were unable to find Howland, flew farther west, and were subsequently captured by Japanese forces near the Japanese South Seas Mandate, possibly near Saipan.
What evidence supports this claim?
It remains speculation without concrete, verifiable evidence. The theory largely cites unnamed witnesses, including claims from Japanese troops and Saipan natives who allegedly saw or heard of their capture. But no official Japanese records or confirmed physical artifacts have ever surfaced.
Which leaves this theory firmly in the realm of conjecture.
Precisely. Finally, we have the bizarre survival hoax theory that managed to enter the public consciousness.
This came from a 1970 book.
Yes, a book claims she survived the flight, returned to the U.S., and changed her identity, becoming Irene Craigmile Bolam, a housewife in New Jersey.
And this claim quickly led to a legal challenge.
It did. Bolam filed a lawsuit requesting $1.5 million in damages, which would be about $12 million today, for defamation and invasion of privacy. The sheer legal pressure was enough for the book to be initially withdrawn by the publisher.
Though the sources indicate it has since gone back into print.
Yes, but the theory itself has been widely debunked by forensic and biographical analysis.
This persistent mystery continues to fuel intense, ongoing, and expensive privately funded search efforts decades later.
The deep-sea searches have been relentless. David Jordan spent millions in 2003 and 2006 searching a massive area north and west of Howland Island based on that line of position Earhart had broadcast.
And in 2019, Robert Ballard, famous for finding the Titanic, led an expedition around Nikomaro Island.
And also found no wreckage.
The most recent search in 2024 provided a momentary surge of excitement.
It certainly did. The expedition funded by Tony Romeo generated massive global headlines when the team initially thought they had found wreckage 16,000 feet underwater near Howland based on deep-sea sonar.
But it wasn't wreckage.
No. Further, more sophisticated analysis quickly confirmed that the detection was in fact a highly regular rock formation. It just reinforces how incredibly challenging it is to prove the ocean crash hypothesis without a definitive locator beacon or significantly improved sonar resolution.
Despite the tragedy and the frustrating lack of a definitive resting place, Amelia Earhart's profound legacy is secured. She is far more than just a missing pilot. She is a global cultural icon.
Absolutely. She masterfully embraced celebrity culture while advocating fiercely for women's rights and personal independence. She remains widely cited as a feminist icon who stood for persistence, courage, and self-determination.
And U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton in 2012 paid tribute to her,
stating that Earhart created a legacy that resonates today for anyone, girls and boys, who dreams of the stars.
Her accomplishments provided a template for others. Her work directly inspired a generation of female aviators,
including the more than 1,000 female pilots who went on to join the Women Air Force Service Pilots, or WASP, serving during World War II.
Her influence transcends aviation entirely. She's been inducted into both the National Aviation Hall of Fame and the National Women's Hall of Fame.
And her ties to Purdue University remain robust. The campus features Earhart Hall, dedicated to her memory, and the new Amelia Earhart terminal is set to open in 2025.
We see memorials across the country and the Pacific, including a U.S. airmail stamp issued in 1963, the Amelia Earhart Dam in Massachusetts,
and the Earhart Light, a navigational beacon that still stands vigil on tiny Howland Island.
Her story is rich fodder for popular culture, too. It demonstrates her persistent hold on the imagination.
Films like Amelia, Night at the Museum, Battle of the Smithsonian have retold her tale. Musically, Joni Mitchell's reflective song Amelia from her 1976 album Hajira ruminates on the high cost of being a woman pursuing an essential calling.
And more recently, the 2024 public service broadcasting album, The Last Flight, is dedicated entirely to narrating her final fateful journey. In summation, Amelia Earhart's life was this rapid, determined progression. From a girl whose adventurous spirit surfaced when she crashed her homemade roller coaster, navigating chronic illness and early financial hurdles, to organizing a complex, custom-built, record-breaking flight. We have explored the massive technical hurdles and the devastating failure of communication and equipment, the time discrepancies, the RDF incompatibility, the Bendix system failure that doomed her final leg near Howland Island.
The government's conclusion, that she ran out of fuel and crashed into the sea, is the prevailing belief among historians, necessitated by the failure of all guidance systems at the critical moment.
Right.
Yet the sheer depth of the ocean where the Electra likely rests, coupled with the lack of any confirmed wreckage despite the massive $87 million spent on search efforts, is what ensures the mystery persists and keeps those alternative theories alive.
It is that unanswered question, the lack of a final resting place, that ensures her legend continues to grow.
Indeed. Which brings us to a provocative thought for you to consider. On September 26, 2025, President Donald Trump ordered all government records concerning Earhart declassified and released. What new, verifiable facts, if any, might be contained in those records, perhaps about the Itasca's operational logs or the communication failures that could finally resolve the final location of the Electra?
Thanks for listening.